Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East, Volume 1, by Baird T. Spalding, narrated by Brad Johnson. Chapter 1. We had been in India about 2 years, doing regular routine research work, and when I met the master known in these writings as Emil, while walking along a street in the city where we were staying, my attention was attracted to a crowd. I saw the center of interest was one of the street magicians, or fakirs, that are so common in that country. As I stood there, I noticed beside me an elderly man who was not of the same caste as those about him. He looked at me and asked if I had been long in India. I replied, about 2 years. He asked, "Are you English?" I answered, "American." I was surprised and very much interested to find one who spoke English. I asked him what he thought of the performance then going on. He answered, "Oh, it is a common occurrence in India. These fellows are called fakirs, magicians, and hypnotists. They are all the name implies, but underneath it all is a deeper spiritual meaning that few discern, and good will come of it some day. It is but the shadow of the thing from which it sprang. It has caused a great deal of comment, and those commenting upon it seem never to have reached the true meaning, for there certainly is a truth underneath it all." Here we parted, and I saw him only occasionally during the next 4 months. Our expedition was confronted by a problem which gave us a great deal of trouble. In the midst of our worries, I again met Emil. Immediately, he asked what was bothering me, and began talking about our problem. I wondered at this, for I felt that none of our party had mentioned it outside of our little circle. His familiarity with the situation was such that I felt the whole matter was known to him. He explained that he had a certain insight into the affair, and that he would endeavor to help. Within a day or two, the matter was cleared up, leaving us without a problem. We wondered at this, but, with other things to occupy our time, soon forgot. As other problems came up, it became a habit with me to talk them over with Emil. It seemed that as soon as I discussed our troubles with him, they would cease to exist. My associates had met and talked with Emil, but I had said little to them about him. By this time I had read a number of books on Hindu lore, selected by Emil, and I was fully convinced that he was one of the adepts. My curiosity was keenly aroused, and I was becoming more deeply interested each day. One Sunday afternoon, Emil and I were walking in a field when he called my attention to a pigeon circling overhead and casually remarked that the bird was looking for him. He stood perfectly still, and in a few moments the bird alighted upon his outstretched arm. He said the bird has a message from his brother in the north. This proved to be a fellow worker who had not reached the attainment whereby he could communicate directly, so he took this means. We later found that the masters are able to communicate with each other instantly by thought transference, or, as they call it, a force, much more subtle than either electricity or wireless. I then began to ask questions, and Emil showed me that he was able to call the birds to him and direct their flight while they were in their air, that the flowers and trees would nod to him, that the wild animals would come to him fearlessly. He parted 2 jackals that were fighting over the body of a smaller animal that they had killed and were feeding upon. When he approached them, they stopped fighting and put their heads in his outstretched hands in perfect trust, then resumed their meal in quiet. He even gave me one of the young wild creatures to hold in my hands. He then said to me, "This is not the mortal self, the self you see, that is able to do these things. It is a truer, deeper self. It is what you know as God, God within me, God the omnipotent one, working through me, that does these things. Of myself, the mortal self, I can do nothing. It is only when I get rid of the outer entirely and let the actual, the I am, speak and work, and let the great love of God come forth that I can do these things that you have seen. When you let the love of God pour through you to all things, nothing fears you, and no harm can befall you. Every day during this time I had lessons with Emil. He would suddenly appear in my room, even if I had taken special care to lock the door before retiring. At first his appearance at will disturbed me, but I soon saw that he took it for granted that I understood. I became accustomed to his ways and left my door open so that he could come and go as he pleased. This confidence seemed to please him. I could not understand all his teachings, and I could not accept them fully, nor was I able, with all I saw while in the East, to fully accept at the time. It required years of meditation to bring me the realization of the deep spiritual meaning of these people's lives. Their work is accomplished without ostentation and in perfect childlike simplicity. They know the power of love to protect them, and they cultivate it until all nature is in love with them and befriends them. Thousands of the common people are killed annually by serpents and wild animals, yet these masters have so brought forth the power of love in themselves that serpents and wild animals do not injure them. They live at times in the wildest jungles, and sometimes lay their bodies down before a village to protect it from the ravages of wild animals, and no harm befalls the village or themselves. When occasion requires they walk on water, go through fire, travel in the invisible, and do many other things that we have been accustomed to look upon as miracles, performed only by one supposed in some way to possess supernatural powers. There is a striking resemblance between the life and teaching of Jesus of Nazareth and those of these masters, as exemplified in their daily life. It has been thought impossible for man to derive his daily supply directly from the universal, to overcome death, and to perform the various so-called miracles that Jesus performed while on earth. The masters prove that all these are their daily life. They supply everything needed for their daily wants directly from the universal, including food, clothing, and money. They have so far overcome death that many of them now living are over 500 years of age, as was conclusively proved by their records. There are comparatively few of these masters in India, other cults seeming to be but offshoots of their teaching. They realize their number is limited and that only a few scholars can come to them. In the invisible, however, they can reach almost unlimited numbers, and it seems to be the greater work of their lives to reach out into the invisible and help all who are receptive to their teaching. The teaching of Emil laid the foundation for the work which we were to take up years later in our third expedition to these countries, during which time we lived with the masters continuously for 3.5 years, traveled with them, and observed their daily lives and work throughout the Far East. Chapter 2. We arrived at Potel, from where the expedition was to start, late in the afternoon of December 22nd, 1894, and found we were to start Christmas morning upon what was to be the most memorable expedition of our whole lives. I never shall forget the few words Emil said to us that morning. These words were delivered in fluent English, although the speaker did not boast an English education, and he had never been out of the Far East. He began by saying, "'Tis Christmas morning. To you I suppose it is the day Jesus of Nazareth, the Christ, was born. To you the thought must come that he was sent to remit sins. To you he must typify the great mediator between you and your God. You seem to appeal to Jesus as a mediator between you and your God, who seems to be a stern and, at times, an angry God, sitting off somewhere in the place called heaven, located where I do not know, except it be in man's consciousness. You seem to be able to reach God only through his less austere and more loving Son, the great and noble one whom we all call blessed, and whose advent into the world this day commemorates. To us this day means more. To us this day not only means the advent into this world of Jesus, the Christ, but also this birth typifies the birth of Christ in every human consciousness. This Christmas day means the birth of the great Master and Teacher, the great liberator of mankind from material bondage and limitations. To us this great soul came on earth to show more fully the way to the real God, the great omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient one, to show that God is all goodness, all wisdom, all truth, all in all. This great Master who came to us, this world, this day, was sent to show more fully that God not only dwells without us, but within us, that he never is, nor can be, separated from us or any of his creations, that he is always a just and loving God, that he is all things, knows all things, knows all, and is all truth. Had I the understanding of all men, it is beyond my power to express to you, even in a humble way, what this holy birth means to us. We are fully convinced, and we hope you also will see that this great Master and Teacher came to us, that we might have a fuller understanding of life here on earth, that all mortal limitations are but man-made, and in no other way should they be interpreted. We know that this greatest of all teachers came to show more fully that the Christ in him, and through whom he did his mighty works, is the same Christ that lives in you, in me, and in all mankind, that we can, by applying his teachings, do all the works that he did, and greater works. We believe that Jesus came to show more fully that God is the one great and only cause of all things, that God is all. You may have heard it said that we believe Jesus received his early training among us. Perhaps some of us do believe. Let that be as it is. Does it matter whether his training came from among us or as a direct revelation from God, the one source where all things really exist? For when an idea from God-mind has been contacted by one man and sent out through the spoken word, cannot one, or all, again contact that thought in the universal? Because one has contacted the idea and sent it out, it does not follow that it is his particular possession. If he did appropriate and hold it, where would be room for receiving? To receive more, we must give out what we have received. If we withhold what we receive, stagnation will follow, and we will be like the wheels that generates power from the water and suddenly, of its own volition, begins to withhold the water which it is using. It will soon find itself stifled with inert water. It is only when the water is allowed to flow freely through that it is of value to the wheel to create power. Just so with man. When he contacts God's ideas, he must give them out in order to receive the benefit from them. He must allow all to do the same, that they may grow and develop as he is growing. I am of the opinion that what Jesus taught came to him as a direct revelation from God, as it no doubt has come to our great teachers. Are not all things of God? and whatever one human being can do, cannot all do? We believe you will be convinced that God is ever willing and ready to reveal himself to all men as he has revealed himself to Jesus and others. The only requisite necessary is for each one to be willing to let God come forth. We believe with all sincerity that all are created equal, that all men are one man, that the mighty works done by Jesus can and will be done by all. You will see there is nothing mysterious about these works. The mystery is only in man's mortal concept of them. We fully realize you have come to us with minds more or less skeptical. We trust you will live with us and know us as we really are. Our work and the results accomplished, we leave you to accept or reject as you will. Chapter 3. Emil sent us away with a few remarks, in which he said, "You are about to start on your expedition with these two men, Just and Nepro, to accompany you. As you travel, it will take about 5 days to journey to your next important stopping place, about 90 miles distant. I will tarry here for a time, because it will not be necessary for me to consume that time to cover the distance. But I will be there to greet you. I wish to ask that you leave one of your party here, in order to make observations and corroborate what may happen. In this way, time will be saved, and he will be able to join the expedition not later than 10 days hence. We simply ask him to watch and report what he sees." We started with Just and Nepro, in charge of the expedition, and I wish to say that more business-like arrangements could not well be imagined. Every detail was complete and swung into line with the rhythm and precision of music. This harmony was maintained throughout the entire expedition, which lasted 3.5 years. We arrived at the appointed village about 4 o'clock of the 5th day, and there was Emil to greet us, as he had agreed. Can you imagine our amazement? We were quite certain we had come by the only traveled route and by the swiftest mode of locomotion in that country, except as the couriers go. They travel in relays and go night and day. Here was a man well advanced in years, as we thought, and one we felt would in no wise be able to negotiate a journey of 90 miles in less time than it required us to do the same. Yet here he was. Of course, we all tried to ask questions at once, and were eager to hear. These were his words. "I said when you departed that I would be here to greet you. I am here. I wish to call your attention more fully to the fact that man, in his right domain, is limitless, knows no limit of time or space. Man, when he knows himself, is not obliged to toil wearily along for 5 days to accomplish 90 miles. Man, in his right estate, can accomplish any distance. It matters not the magnitude, instantly. A moment ago, I was in the village from which you departed 5 days ago. What you saw as my body still reposes there. Your associate, whom you left in that village, will tell you that, until a few moments before 4 o'clock, I conversed with him, stating that I would go to greet you as you would arrive here about this hour. What you saw as my body is still there, and your associate still beholds it, although it is at present inactive. This was done simply to show that we are able to leave our bodies and greet you at any appointed place at any specified time. The two who accompanied you could have accomplished the journey as I have. In this way, you will more readily realize that we are only ordinary humans of the same source as you, that there is no mystery, but that we have developed the powers given all by the Father, the great omnipotent one, more fully than you have. My body will remain where it is until night. Then I will bring it here, and your associate will proceed on his way here as you did, arriving in due time. After a day's rest, we will journey to a small village 1 day off, where we will tarry 1 night. Then return here and meet your associate to see what his report will be. We will assemble this evening in the lodge. In the meantime, farewell." In the evening, after we had assembled, Emil, without opening the door, suddenly appeared in our midst and said, "You have seen me appear in this room, as you would say, by magic. Let me say there is no magic about it. Here is a simple experiment which you can behold. You can see this, consequently you will believe. Kindly gather around so that you can see. We have a small glass of water, which one of your number has just brought up from the spring. You see that a minute particle of ice is forming in the very center of the water. You see it gather to itself, particle by particle, more ice, until now the whole of the water in the glass is frozen. What has happened? I held the central atoms of the water in the universal until they became formed, or, in other words, I lowered their vibrations until they became ice, and all the other particles formed around them until the whole has become ice. You can apply this to the little glass, the tub, the pond, the lake, the sea, the whole mass of the water of the earth. What would happen? All would be frozen, would it not? To what purpose? None. You ask by what authority? I say by using a perfect law. But in this case, to what end? Nothing, as no good has been accomplished or could be accomplished. Had I gone on determined to carry this out fully, what would have happened? The reaction. To whom? To me. I know the law, and what I express returns to me as truly as I express it. Therefore, I express only the good, and the good returns to me only as good. You can readily see that had I persisted in the freezing, the cold would have reacted upon me long before I had accomplished the end, and I would, in reaping the harvest of my desire, have been frozen. Whereas if I expressed the good, I reap the harvest of my good eternally. My appearance in this room tonight may be explained in this way. In the little room where you left me, I held my body in the universal, by raising its vibrations, and it returned to the universal, or, as we say, returning it to the universal where all substance exists. Then, through my I am, my Christ consciousness, I held my body in my mind until its vibrations were lowered, and it took form right here in this room, and you could see it. Wherein is there any mystery? Am I not using the power or the law given me by the Father through the beloved Son? Is not this Son you and I and all mankind? Wherein lies the mystery? There is none. Consider the faith represented by the mustard seed. It comes to us from the universal through the Christ within, which has already been born within us all. As a minute speck, it enters through the Christ, or superconscious mind, the place of receptivity within ourselves, that it must be carried to the mount or highest within ourselves, the very top of the head. It is held there. We must then allow the Holy Spirit to descend. Now comes the admonition. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy strength, and with all thy mind. Think. Does the meaning come? Heart, soul, strength, mind. Is there anything to do at this point but to turn it all over to God, the Holy Spirit, the whole I Spirit in action? This Holy Spirit comes in many ways, perhaps as tiny entities, tapping and seeking admittance. We must accept and allow this Holy Spirit to come in and unite with the minute point of light or seed of knowing and revolve around it and adhere to it, just as you saw the particles of ice adhere to the central particle. And it will grow and form particle by particle, circle by circle, just as the ice, multiply and express that seed of knowing until you are able to say to the mountain of difficulties, "Be thou removed and cast into the sea," and it will be done. Call this fourth dimension or what you wish. We call it God in expression through the Christ in us. It is in this way that Christ was born. Mary, the great mother, perceived the ideal. The ideal was held in mind, then conceived in the soil of her soul, held for a time there, then brought forth or born as the perfect Christ child, the firstborn, the only begotten, the Son of God. He was nourished and protected, given the very best of the mother, watched over and cherished until he grew from childhood into manhood. It is thus the Christ comes to all of us, first as an ideal planted in the soil of our soul, the central part where God is, held in mind as the perfect ideal, then brought forth or born as the perfect child, the Christ consciousness. You who have seen what has been accomplished here, doubt your own eyes. I do not blame you. I get the thought of hypnotism from the minds of some. My brothers, is there one here who feels that he does not have the power to exercise every God-given faculty that he has seen brought forth tonight? Do you think for a moment that I am in any way controlling your thought or vision? Do you think that I could, if I would, cast a hypnotic spell over any or all of you? For did you not all see? Is it not recorded in your own great book that Jesus entered a room with the doors closed? He just came in as I have done. Do you think for a moment that Jesus, the great master and teacher, needed in any way to hypnotize? He used his own God-given power as I have done tonight. Let me say that I have done nothing but what each one of you can do. Not only you, but every child that is or has been born into this world or universe has the same power to do just what you have seen accomplished this night. I wish to get this clearly before your minds. Let me also say that you are individuals, that you are not personalities, that you are free wills, not automatons. Jesus did not need to hypnotize, and we do not need to hypnotize. Doubt us all you wish until you are fully satisfied as to our honesty. Put the idea of hypnotism away for the time, or at least let it lie passive until you have gone deeper into the work. All we ask is that you keep an open mind.